Let me paint you a picture. You're an honest, Tau-fearing, corrupted mod farmer. So was your father before you, and his father before him. You run into those vaults every day to make an honest living. It ain't much, but it's enough plat to get by. Heck, even your dad sold a couple of his best, max rank blind rages to get you through college and for your first prime set to impress all the hot dudes at school. You finish a day's work, sweat dripping from your back, soul crushed, but feeling proud about the work about to be paid off. You enter the trade chat, typing want to sell, blind rage, overextended, transient fortitude. You hit send excitedly. Suddenly, your message is overtaken by the devils.
Want to sell horrid skibbity critter. Want to sell dual toxicist crit titty. Want to sell Magistar motherfricker. 40 zillion plat, no low balls. Don't waste my time, I know what I have.
Now you have to wait to send another message, but it happens again and again. Riven Mods are one of Warframe's more controversial additions. In a game already riddled with farming tied to pretty high levels of RNG, it felt really weird to have an addition to the game that has so much RNG deeply baked into it. There was a lot more outcry against them when they were initially released, but it feels like a lot of that has settled. While people have their opinions still, it feels like a lot of new gen players are very disconnected from the absolute tomfoolery, goofing, gaffing, hullabaloo BS of the Riven Mods release. This isn't really a Riven retrospective video, maybe a little bit, and ultimately this is going to be a Riven platforming guide, made into a much larger experience for you, where we take a deep look into all of the layers that make Riven farming so interesting, but also how it plagues the trading economy in its own interesting way. Whether you choose to partake in it or not is up to you, but I'm giving you the assets, and in order to engage with it. I still feel it necessary to break down the societal views of Rivens and their impact on the game, but mostly we're looking at their impact on the market and how to, engage in that in whatever way we decide to. Ultimately, I'm not the arbiter of ethics here in Warframe, especially not in the trade chat. There's no such thing. But let us begin at the surface. Surface level, before the plunge. So what exactly is a Riven mod? A Riven mod is a mod specific to one weapon and all of its subsets, meaning if a Riven mod is for the Heck, for example, it can be applied to the Kuva and Vacor variants. There are some differences there, but I'll describe those in a moment. Riven mods are incredibly unique in that they can possess random stats with random values. That's between 2 and 3 positive stats, and between 0 and 1 negative stats. If there's a negative stat presence, it amplifies the 2 or 3 positive stats. Likewise, if there's only 2 positive stats, those 2 positive stats will be larger in value than if there were 3. Due to the nature of multiplication, generally you will want 3 positive stats, but situations can vary largely there. The stats can be basically anything you can imagine. Crit chance, crit damage, base damage, multi-shot, status chance, status duration, all sorts of stuff, but also really niche stats like projectile speed, zoom, crit chance while sliding, combo count gain, stuff like that. Basically, there's the making for some seriously strong Riven mods here. So how can these be balanced? And wouldn't strong weapons just be stronger and weak weapons still sit behind? Not necessarily. Riven disposition is a stat that every weapon and weapon variant has, which determines the multiplier that the stats on the Riven mod receive. This is all done by digital extremes on an individual level, and it's very subjective and kind of riddled with problems due to its subjectivity. For example, every new weapon that comes out starts with a 1-star Riven disposition, which is a low range of multiplier. Obviously, I understand the precaution, but some of these weapons are just very obviously going to be kind of buns. Warframe has been out for some time. We kind of know what's going to end up being strong. Not always, but generally speaking, a base assault rifle, like some of these Scaldra weapons, we know aren't going to be able to do much on their own. Riven mods use the base stats of weapons and can't change the things that are fundamental about them. If a weapon was clearly not going to be able to kill a bunch of enemies at once, which is a big part of what's meta in Warframe at the moment, no amount of stats are going to help with that, unfortunately. So when we have Scaldra weapons come out with, low Riven dispo, it kind of feels like ass, to me. Not a huge fan. Likewise, Riven disposition was never meant to account for incarnate adapters. Rivens were added to help out weaker weapons and to add more flavor to your favorite weapons. Incarnate weapon adapters were added to help out weaker weapons and add a bit more flavor to a lot of the weapons that we grew up using as Baby Tenno. These two stacked multiplicatively in the case of options like the Torrid and Dual Toxicist. Old weapons that were kinda buns, so were given really strong Riven dispo, and really strong Incarnates as well. Obviously 2 different timelines there. So now we have the Torrid being basically the best primary in the game, almost on none of its own merit really. post Steel Path and like the Mars EFV1 or whatever that Scourger assault rifle is, having one Riven dispo because it's new, I guess. So now you can probably imagine why Rivens can be so problematic in terms of the community, and markets especially. Because keep in mind, these things are tradable. The Riven mods are tradable. The positives are that you get a potentially very strong mod for your favorite weapons, and that's great. I actually like that a lot. Whether that ends up being good is kind of up to DE. They have retroactively and proactively changed Riven dispos on a whim. It happens, and they make mistakes, so it's okay. It's a good thing that they can be changed in like a hot fix because they make mistakes. All game devs do, and that's okay. It's still kind of fun, and I like having a gun that is uniquely my own, personally. Some folks don't like that as much. I think one of the appeals of Warframe is that once you're endgame, even midgame at some point, once you have most relevant mod assets, you can basically replicate any build that any creator makes and achieve similar outcomes. The negatives with Rivens are a lot more complicated, however. Firstly, we gotta touch on Kuva. There will be a whole ring dedicated to Kuva, but Kuva is basically the spawn of Satan. It's almost exclusively used to reroll Rivens. It serves almost zero other purposes. Rerolling Rivens is a theoretically infinite process that determines the stats you get on a Riven mod. There is no guarantee anywhere that any amount of Kuva will ever be enough. It is also an incredibly gated resource. But unlike Riven mods, it's not actually time gated, which means that anyone who wants to interact with Riven gambling and rerolling can spend any time that would be gated towards the mods themselves, farming the Kuva for their current or for their future gambling adventures. Gambling kind of leads to psychotic mental behavior, and this is most obvious in the effect that Rivens have had in trade chat. It's absolutely pure speculation, gas leak in your house, huffing galaxy gas nonsense. These are the same dickheads selling their warm coat mod, max rank for 40 plat, getting their hands on these basically like cryptocurrency ass mods. We're so cooked. Anyways, the biggest downside to Riven mods, in my opinion, by far, is their impact on trade chat and the speculative nature of the trading environment. I think that's really the main thing, personally. And this is speaking as someone who is generally pro-Riven, even though I think in the cases of the Torrid and cases adjacent to it, I'm very annoyed by the execution on DE's part. That's not the community's fault, really. And the main thing that I think actually keeps Rivens out of the critical eye, especially after some time that they've been released, is that Rivens are so far from necessary in the current Warframe metagame, which is a good thing, by the way. Warframe is an easy enough game in terms of intended content. The DPS checks via Rivens or no Rivens are not really relevant at all. We overkill enemies by Lord knows how much, and there's even really strong weapons that don't need those Rivens. And I really like that because it means that I can use my niche favorite weapons, they can get a strong Riven that's nice, or there's a certain interaction with the Riven that's really good. And you know, there's a fixed amount of mods for each stat, which is why Rivens I think are particularly unique, in that you can only get so much crit chance, for example, meaning like certain interactions are unachievable without a Riven. This is very obvious in the case of the Verglas. There's a reason those mods sell for so much. It's so you can use Tenacious Bond properly and have the crit chance on the Verglas high enough to proc Tenacious Bond with your Warframe. Stuff like the Agrit, being able to fire out 4 projectiles and detonate 4 projectiles with one throw, because you can only have so much multi-shot on the Agrit. Same with a Cytoid, I believe. Araxia's secondary that groups based on multi-shot. Heat Inherit, all sorts of, you can only have so many heat mods on a weapon. But staying on my main point here, in a game like WoW or Destiny, the ability to do X amount of damage can almost dictate your fun or enjoyment. For example, having more strict spell rotations, having an extra phase of a boss. I mean, there's boss fights that are much more fun and feel much more enjoyable when they're done quickly. Your DPS checks in those games are so much more violent and require you to roll and gamble and do so much more content. In Destiny, in games like WoW, I think too, my experience with WoW is quite limited. You are fighting for 1 or 2% DPS increases for like 80% of your time to spend the 20% of time feeling better. If that makes sense. I'm not sure if I explained that properly, but I think if Riven mods gave damage increases that we genuinely needed, DE's offices would have already been burned down and raided. I mean, I personally enjoy them, but as long as, that's only so as long as they stay in their unrequired, mostly for fun state. I love having an insanely strong Paragale or Sybaris. I mean, those are just my favorite weapons, personally. I'm sure you probably enjoy your weird niche weapons and you get a crazy Riven for it, and that's fun. I like that. Especially in this current state of Warframe where anything feels viable. It's awesome. But I will say the impact on trade chat is really frustrating, and I would just not mind at all if DE added a separate trading chat for Rivens. I think that'd be cool. I'm sure you could probably poke holes in that. I haven't fully thought that solution through, but I think just how text heavy selling Rivens is, it takes up more pixels on my screen. I'm trying to trade away like, you know, smaller things. It's a little bit annoying, but anyways, you've got your fair warning. You've gotten your background. We're getting into the farming part now, bit by bit, ring by ring. I suggest you subscribe now because you're not coming back up from this. Let's get into it. Ring 1, the genesis of sin. You made it this far. Congratulations. So how do we begin this unholy process? The first act of heresy is the acquisition of what's called a Veiled Riven Mod. Veiled Riven Mods come from a variety of sources and have a variety of classes, mostly tied to the class of the weapon. So shotgun, melee, rifle, pistol, Zaw, kit gun. These are going to be tied to Archon Hunts, Sorties, Steel Path Circuits, and a couple other random pieces of content, primarily Paladino on Ironwake, which is on Earth. You need to complete Chains of Harrow to access that, but that's a great quest anyway. You should go do that. Archgun Riven mods are exclusive to Arbitrations and the vendor for the Arbiters of Hexus. Companion Riven mods are exclusive to Cephalon Samaris, and I believe the Duviri vendor can sell any of these at some point. As you can assess, most of these methods are time gated. They're limited by time, and either by standing or the method itself, you know, daily sortie rotations. So how do we determine which Veiled Rivens we want? Assuming that we want Platinum, right? A lot of this is based on the meta, which is ever changing, but there are some staples that aren't going anywhere anytime soon. We know DE is pretty opposed to nerfing a lot of things, so most things that are strong now will likely be strong in the future. Will they be the strongest? Who's to say? But most things will keep their value from my experience. My best examples would be the aforementioned sacrilegious, heretic, disgusting, the Torrid. But there's other things like the Vergloss, which is specifically strong because of that Tenacious Bond threshold that I mentioned. Most of the Incarnans are going to be generally pretty strong, and obviously metas change, but the main 3 reasons a Riven might be desired for Platinum is usually for its general strength and good rolls, the weapon itself, or a unique interaction with certain stats, which I can see more of in the future, but right now, again, Tenacious Bond, negative crit chance on the Latum or like Fenmore, stuff like that. So the main 3 reasons are going to be good rolls on almost any weapon. Most weapons are fairly viable, so unless you have an absolute, you know, booty cheeks weapon, generally speaking, good strength and rolls is good. Oh, the weapon itself, the rolls can be garbage, but if it's for the Torrid, it'll still sell for 400 plat almost no matter what, as of the making of this video. Or a unique interaction, maybe you just need one special stat. Again, in the case of Tenacious Bond, crit, or negative crit chance on the Latum, whatever, so on and so forth. Veiled Rivens themselves can actually be sold for a decent penny. Most of them are sold for 5 to 15 plat, while a companion Riven mod can sell up to 40 platinum. The main reason for this is because no one wants to do their Cephalon Samaris standing scanning, and that is also quite time gated aggressively and requires a little bit more effort than the rest of the methods. I've slowly accumulated like 40 rifle Riven mods that I'm doing nothing with, but I have yet to acquire a single companion weapon Riven mod. For how low effort Veiled Rivens are to acquire, this is actually a pretty good stopping point and a good investment of your time. This is also time gated, so you feel no guilt in engaging in an infinite cycle of it, because you can't do that. It's a time gated process. So especially if you're not interested in Riven mods and you just kind of want some platinum, this can be your stopping point. This is your point of freedom from gluttony, gambling. If you can offload it now. No sinning, or you can continue to take the plunge with me. The choice is absolutely yours. Ring 2, point of no return. Unveiling a Riven is conceptually pretty simple. You unveil it by equipping it, at which point it'll be available to be revealed, and the challenge can then be completed. These challenges vary from kinda whatever to really, really strange, like from last 5 minutes in a survival without killing any enemies to kill a Grenier named Mark on Wednesday evening with a sniper rifle with 4 rounds left in the barrel that is painted red with the hex code 102921. I'm not even sure when I wrote that joke. I doubt that's red. in the hex code, but you know, what are you gonna do? Generally speaking, your ability to pass the skill check provided by these Veiled Rivens is entirely up to you. Your ability to use your arsenal wisely is crucial here, but I'll be real, some of those challenges are straight up BS, and if you can't hang with that, there are multiple sources of Veiled Riven ciphers, allowing you to bypass this usually corny-ass challenge. These ciphers are generally going to be attained every week from Steel Path Honors Teshin, although they can be acquired from like some random event alerts and can be bought from the market for 20 platinum. This is the first layer of RNG and gambling that you can partake in. If you decided to not sell your Veiled Riven and you're cracking it, or yeah, that's a fine way to describe it. If you're unveiling it, you are now engaging in the RNG point. If you get a weapon you like when you unveil, that's great, you can keep it. Throw it on your desired weapon. If it's something you like, that's great. The more weapons that you like, the higher of a chance that you'll be satisfied. If it's a popular weapon, you can generally sell it for a pretty good amount of plat, and you're gonna wanna leave that unrolled. We're gonna talk about rolling Rivens in a second, but if you found a weapon that you think is popular and you don't wanna keep it unrolled. The reason is because we talked about Kuva earlier being necessary to roll Riven stats. That number of Kuva gets higher and higher up to a pretty absurd cap per roll as you roll more often. So leave it unrolled if you're trying to sell it. It will sell for more platinum. And if you get total junk, you know, not a weapon you like, not a weapon that's meta, it's just garbage, and statistically this will be the majority of the time, unless you just love a lot of weapons. Some players are really good at the game and can make a lot of weapons work, or for me personally, I enjoy a lot of the weapons that Warframe has to offer. There's just so many of them. So it's still likely that there's going to be some garbage. You can still sell them for a little bit of plat, probably a little less than if you were to sell it veiled. This is because 4 unveiled Rivens can be converted back into another veiled Riven for another attempt. Likewise, you can keep the trash for yourself to transmute, that's what the process of taking 4 and turning it into a veiled is. So you can keep it for yourself to make a new veiled Riven, or sell it to a player. They will buy your trash Rivens. I see it all the time in trade chat, and hopefully that's enough for you. You sell that, you're not done. You're a fucking glutton. Okay, all right, buddy. Just subscribe now, because you're not coming back after this next ring, I promise. Ring 3. Greed, Gluttony, and Kuva. Kuva is the fuel of all sin, acquired by a variety of sources. Kuva has the most appeal to absolute crazy, insane people, and okay, imagine you work a job, right? Except the paycheck from that job has a big ass stamp on it that says, hey, you can literally only spend this on gambling. I know some of my audience members like that. Good for you, not for me personally. So, acquisition. We've got Kuva floods and siphons, which are basically alerts, kind of like the old alert system. These are just normal nodes that have a little Kuva minigame where you can collect Kuva and actually get Requiem relics, which will allow you to farm more Kuva. From there, you will likely go to a Requiem Fissure or a Kuva Survival, whatever. I would recommend getting a Fissure up, but that's not always possible. So you can farm it through a Requiem Fissure Kuva Survival, and that will allow you to, get resource multipliers. Kuva Survival is similar to regular survival, except you just have to you kill enemies, modify the life support units. There you go. So your goal would be to do this on the Steel Path with a Fissure, with a whatever resource booster you can have, ideally, and a blessing as well. Kuva is also sold by a variety of vendors, including Teshin for Steel Path, the Arbitration vendor, and honestly, a lot of vendors sell Kuva, even event vendors. The only problem is that I think that DE has an intention, a hidden agenda, if you will, to throttle Kuva a little bit, even though it's not purely a time-gated resource. I think if they could go back and time-gate it, they would. Kuva also comes from rewards from like bounties, sorties, and a bunch of other random content. It is not the hardest thing to run into. The best results I've personally had, again, is Kuva, Steel Path, Survival Fissures. That's been the best. You get the Steel Essence, which you can then turn to Teshin every week for the Kuva. You get Kuva from the relics themselves, and Kuva from the Kuva generators as well. So that's been my best experience. There are long videos on Kuva, but I actually think it's more simple than a lot of people let on, and any increases are more on the margins. Just make sure you spend 40 platinum on a 3-day resource booster. Trust me, your time is valuable, okay? Know your girth king, all right? Don't let DE rob you of time. Spend the 40 platinum on a 3-day booster, please. Obviously, that content is quite difficult. Steel Path, Kuva Survival might need some resources, but it's so worth the effort. And plus, a lot of people like min-maxing in the first place, so there's a great way to go and do it. The most problematic part of Kuva is that it is such, and like many things in this game, it is such a goddamn content island. This is the problem with a lot of pieces of Warframe content, but it's really bad with Kuva because you can't just put it down. If you want to engage with Riven Mods, you have to do this content. With other content islands, you can kind of abandon them after they've been milked for what they're worth, or continue to visit them purely for fun. That's what I do with like the 1999 calendar, because it keeps giving me good rewards. I love those tile sets. There you go. You know, if they're a better done content island like that, that's totally fine. But with the case of Kuva though, there is really no other way to engage with Rivens, and eventually you're just gonna lose your goddamn mind. If there was any remedy for it, I would actually make Kuva tradable in certain quantities, like let me like throw it in a can or something and send it off to the addicts. That way I can make platinum without having to actually, like if you farm Kuva and you're not doing anything with Riven Mods, there's no point. So I think the ability to not engage with Riven Mods at all, but sell the Kuva off to people who do, would be a really great market force. I would enjoy that a lot, actually. Ring 4, the Levers of Fate. Riven stats are quite varied, as previously mentioned. Honestly, it's not super important that you understand building when it comes to Rivens, but especially if you're just in it for the plat, as they're universal bests per weapon and mostly for each subclass of weapons. Crit chance, and crit damage, and multi-shot. Generally just 3 amazing rolls on any primary. Obviously, metas can shift around a little bit, but they're not capable of moving the needle a whole lot in most cases. For most meta primaries, again, crit chance, crit damage, multi-shot, base damage, status chance, all these things are great. A solid element, toxin, if you can get that, that's kind of, at some point, that's kind of like having like a Kuva weapon, or a Lich weapon. That's very good. Secondaries can be a little funky now that Enervate has been added to the game, which actually substantially decreases the value of crit chance on a Riven. You would just want damage, maybe fire rate, or crit damage, fire rate, and I don't know, an element, right? And I will say there is one mechanic that only the absolute Riven sweats acknowledge are the grades of the rolls. So each roll is not only random in what stat you're getting, but the numeric value of that stat. These also scale with whether you have a negative or not, or whether you have 2 or 3 positives or not. The Riven freaks, especially if you are engaging in like multi-thousand platinum trades, they will check you on this. They are crazy people. Do not trust them. Make sure you go check yourself as well. It's a great way to get a more objective sense of your value. But just be aware, again, you could have something that has 190% crit chance or 210% crit chance. It's completely random based on a scale. So you have your Riven disposition plus the RNG that you roll. Riven dispositions only provide a kind of sliding scale or range of what you can get. For that reason, having a negative is kind of required, because negatives can be so not detrimental, like minus zoom, for example, would be an ideal one, yet they can boost the positive stats by an immense amount. Your goal should, again, have a negative that can be either modded around, which takes a good bit of knowledge and skill, but I enjoy that, or is irrelevant, like minus zoom, minus projectile speed on hit scan weapons, for example. You can have 3 god roll plus stats, but if 1 minus can ruin the entire thing. It's more than possible. Once you've gotten a roll that you feel satisfied with, we can move on to the next step, which is either going to be selling your Riven or modding around it. Since this is ultimately like a plat farming guide, I'm going to assume that you're selling your soul to the devil, but in the case that you are modding, just be aware that it may be necessary to balance out your stats by modding in unique ways you've never done before, especially if you are, and again, no shame here, no judgment. If you are just a YouTube build Andy, you might use mods that you've never used before to compensate for certain weaknesses, element balancing, stuff like that. It's kind of a pain, but if you learn how to properly mod around Rivens, you can turn non-god rolls into absolute beasts, and on the plus side, it just makes your weapon so much more unique. The reason god rolls are god rolls is because you don't have to mod around them. Granted, if you learn how to mod around things, you can have a generally very strong weapon that doesn't cost a bunch of platinum, nor does it have the opportunity cost of a bunch of platinum. It's not like you're sitting on a god roll you could sell. This is kind of your god roll in a sense. Sounds a little corny, but to me it makes sense. Ring 5, Shedding Evil, Beginning Anew. Now it's time for you to sell your Riven. The problem is that Rivens are insanely obnoxious to sell due to their one-of-a-kind nature. You see, with more simple goods like 60/60 elementals, nightmare mods, stuff like that, though the prices from mod to mod may vary, the price of those mods are pretty set in stone from years and years of market mechanics, supply and demand, all that good stuff. Those participating in the marketplace can more accurately assess things such as opportunity costs associated with farming the good, frustration with farming it, whatever. Like if you're farming something that is exclusive to Lua Spy, right, people kind of have an idea of, well, do I really want to do that? This is how much plat I would offer to not do that. basic market stuff. With Rivens, every rule just kind of goes out of the window. Likewise, you're dealing with a ton of emotion. These are players that have gambled Lord knows how many rolls, Lord knows how much Kuva, how many hours of Kuva survival, how much plat on boosters. So much, you understand, right? Emotions are hard to deal with. Marketplaces don't, they kind of, most modern marketplaces rely on it. And with Warframe, you're able to evade that via it being a video game with a micro economy. However, Riven Mods, just everything goes out the window. The Warframe trade chat is just an insane place for insane people. Nothing but respect for you guys, you're real soldiers getting out there. You know, trade chat's not as bad as I constantly make it out to be, but to me, Rivens are part of why trading chat just blows. It sucked before Rivens, I'm not gonna lie, but the way they clutter chat is super annoying, and the subjective value and the speculate. There are folks out here who will put Bernie Madoff to absolute shame in the trade chat. It's absolutely insane. The first solid steps you want to take are going to be like determining why you want to sell the Riven. So 1, it's a very strong or popular weapon. 2, the rolls are incredibly good on it. Again, we mentioned that earlier. Maybe it could be kind of a niche weapon, but the rolls can be good on it, and that could sell to the right buyer, right? Maybe they don't want to engage with the Riven market as much, they don't want to farm the Kuva, whatever. 3 could be both. This is what we generally refer to as strong rolls or god rolls, right? So like a Torrid god roll is one of the most valuable things you can own on your account that you can sell for platinum. Riven mods are incredibly lucrative in, you know, a single item carrying a ton of plat value. Is it the best platform? Absolutely not, far from it. But in terms of like having one thing that costs a lot of plat, this is the way to do it. Is it real value? Not necessarily. Again, you don't need the Riven. Most of it is speculative, but whatever. And then the 4th is it's junk that you want to get rid of. If it's junk, you should honestly have a pretty easy time. There's a lot of people who purposely buy trash Rivens for a large variety of reasons. Some people just like to look at them and see them and buy them from you for cheap, and maybe they can turn it into something great, or maybe the meta shifts, maybe a new augment comes out, so on and so forth. When you're selling for the other 3 reasons, though, we run into a major issue. Because of the nature of Riven mods, their value is incredibly subjective. Combine that with emotions of gambling to acquire strong ones for strong weapons, and you're signing up for a miserable experience. You see, most Rivens are not god rolls. They're rare for a reason, right? God rolls are rare for a reason. Therefore, most Rivens sit in a limbo between trash and godly. Most players will, from my experience, gladly pay the proper price for trash, and most players worth their dignity will nut up and shut up when it comes to buying what is clearly a god roll. Again, even though the value is subjective, we can look at things at the rolls that you would want for DPS and say, this is basically a god roll. I'll shut up and, you know, put the fries in the bag, to say metaphorically. Anything between godly and trash is, we're experiencing hell on earth. So how do we find out what something is even worth? Firstly, setting a little hook in trade chat every once in a while is a solid approach. It guarantees nothing, but it's not really any real effort. You're just typing out your Riven. You'll be able to fish for a few prices and see how it goes. There are some honest, God-fearing motherfuckers in chat, so don't always be scared of trade chat. It takes no effort. You can put it on your clipboard and paste it in, no big deal. They might give you like a ballpark value at best, which is great, and you might get lucky, who knows. At worst, you get called a slur. I mean, that's not my problem, right? You'll be fine, I promise. I would say the best approaches you could take are the Warframe Riven Trading subreddit and subreddits like it, communities like it, and Warframe.market. The Riven sub-tab is really useful. Thankfully, it's pretty simple. All you're going to do is open up Warframe.market, and again, if you're on your phone, this is actually still, like if you're on console, for example, so you have to use your phone. There's an app, so like it's just not that bad. You're gonna want to click Rivens here, and from here you can search for, kind of get a Riven price. You can also make a listing yourself. Warframe.market is not perfect, but it's one of the greater pieces of infrastructure that Warframe has. It's third party, obviously, in order to sell your Rivens. So I strongly recommend this. Again, there is no downside to broadly casting your net when it comes to Warframe trading. It is objectively more efficient. There is no negative to being more broad in your selling approaches. And congrats, that's the end. Hopefully you sold your Riven, made some platinum, and if greed takes over, you are probably running it back right now as we speak. So I wanted to thank you guys for your viewership through getting towards the end. That just means the entire world to me. Thank you so much for all the support, and just a quick note that Fire Thought, the name of the player who won this giveaway, I hope you enjoyed this one, buddy. This was a gift to to one of my viewers. Did the little 1K video giveaway, plat giveaway, and congratulations, my man. Hopefully you enjoyed this one a lot. I had a little bit of a script already written for this bit. I've got like 10 scripts. I'm super. Got these next few videos I'm really excited for. I just wanted to give a chance to give myself a chance to say thank you. Hopefully you guys like this kind of format of video. I know it's a little bit funky. I'm not really sure how to incorporate graphics into everything, but I'm learning here, so just be patient with me. Appreciate you guys' love so much. Thank you for all the support, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.